John his flower? Will you please give John his flower? They're on that back table. The one where the three beautiful ladies are standing. There's a flower for John. Oh, it looks like Fumiko's got it. We're all set. We're all set. All set. So? Start? Yes. Okay. You bet. No?
It's wonderful to see you all here. Thank you for coming. I'm glad that we'll have this chance to remember Mom and spend some time together and celebrate her life. Of course, there's also plenty of grieving that's already happened and continuing to happen, but I'm hoping that we can also think about how fortunate we all are to have had her in our lives, and think positively about that and her continuing life in another place, and her continuing love for us all. It's been about 6 months since Mom passed, and that has given me a little bit of time to reflect on who she was and all that she did for me, and the inspirational way in which she lived her life. So I'll just say a few of my memories about her, and then there will be a chance for a few other people to share their memories as well. We have a couple of people who have some plan to speak, and then if somebody else wants to come up and say something briefly, spontaneously, that's okay. And then Christopher and Sarah will share a piece of music that Christopher composed for Mom, an elegy for Esther. And then we'll have a chance to greet one another after that for perhaps 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll head out to the old farm. Anybody who's able to come, please join us, and we'll scatter Mom's ashes. And then in the evening, we'll have a reception at a house up on Coddington Road. And everybody's welcome to that as well. So one of my most recent memories of Mom kind of captures her entire life for me in a way. In her final days, she was very weak and wasn't able to really get out of bed or really do anything for herself. But the one thing that she was able to do and that she continued to do was blow kisses to all of us whenever we entered the room. She never really asked for anything as she was dying. She didn't even ask for a glass of water, but she was constantly giving us smiles and love and kisses. And she wasn't worried at all about her passing. She was full of faith and confidence and happy that she had lived a good life and that she was surrounded by family and friends. And yes, she lived a great life. And she was always putting the needs of others before her own. whether it was for her family or for her close friends or even for people who she barely knew. You know, she was, as you know, she was a very independent-minded person, but very open-minded as well. She always wanted to explore many different perspectives and traditions, and she was always looking for the good in everything. She cared a lot about people. She tried to help people through her whole life, and she recognized the goodness in others. And she made a lot of really good friends in her life, wherever she went. And we were blessed to have all of these friends in our lives as well. I remember so many things, all the parties that we went to as a family, whether it was 4th of July up at the McFeeters, or it was Christmas at the Lewis's, singing Christmas carols. All of these things were very formative for me. We spent a lot of time up at the Larkins' house, of course, and you know, we just had a lot of good friends all over the area, and all of you were kind of very helpful for me growing up. So one of the friends of Mom who she introduced me to is Edith, who is my wife now. So Mom's friends really have been with me throughout my whole life and have helped me a lot in a lot of ways. And Edith, of course, has been a really good friend and wife to me. I'm having trouble seeing where she is. Okay, you're right there behind you, Jen. All right. Hi, Edith. Mom was very social. She liked to work together with other people in small groups to do good things together. And there were so many examples of that. She just kept doing that throughout her life. She would always kind of somehow either find or help form these little committees, action committees on for different things, mostly helping people out with kind of their lives and doing the things that they wanted to do. For me, you know, as her son, she gave me a lot of space and independence. She was not at all controlling. She didn't have like a vision of what my life was supposed to be, that she was sort of railroading me along. Instead, she kind of just wanted to know what I wanted, and she always was there for me whenever I needed her. She supported me in doing whatever I wanted to do. One memory I have is of a time when I was a little kid and I wanted a tree house, and I somehow just mentioned to Mom like that I wanted a tree house, and then all of a sudden she flew into motion and we were measuring and cutting up sort of spare pieces of lumber that we had up in the barn, and she was showing me how to build a tree house, and we built a tree house, and I was very happy about that. It was a special little project, and you know, when Dad complained about all of his good lumber getting used up, that he might need to do repairs on the house or something, she sort of defended my desire to have a tree house, and said that that was important too. So she always saw me as a good person, even when she had to discipline me because I had not been good. I could tell that she loved me and thought the world of me anyway, even though she was having to, you know, remind me that my behavior is important. The one thing that really, there were, of course, lots of naughty things that we did, but I think the one thing that I actually got a spanking for was when Mom had gotten a brand new car, which was the only new car she ever had in her entire life. And shortly after that brand new car arrived in our driveway, I figured out that it had a cigarette lighter, and that if you pushed the cigarette lighter in, it would get glowing red hot. And then if you pressed that into the steering wheel, you would melt a nice little circle in the steering wheel. And so I made lots of little circles all the way around the steering wheel. And I was very pleased with myself. And then I went along with my day after that. And some number of hours later, Mom found out about my little artwork on her steering wheel and was not as pleased with it as I was. So I somehow remember, though, that she felt really sorry that she had to give me a spanking, and she really made it clear to me that she loved me and that this was, a good opportunity for me to reflect on myself and my behavior and think about maybe doing a little better in the future. Mom always encouraged me to play with kids who might be having trouble making friends at school. I know that she had some challenging experiences in school, and she was always keen to help me learn to be inclusive and accepting of other kids, regardless of what their behavior might be like, or if they had some, personality quirks that might have made them a little less cool, perhaps. She wanted me to know that it was always important to treat each person with kindness. Mom was an intensely loyal person to every family member and friend. I saw that in every way with how she treated Dad and all of us and all of her friends. She was always quick to come to anybody's defense. It was clear that she really liked Dad's goofy and playful joking, and she joined in with it, and they have been a very special couple through their entire lives. At times we were, kind of wishing Mom and Dad would behave a little bit more sort of seriously and normally around other people, but, they insisted on their fun, independent way of relating to each other, and they loved each other very much. And I think we learned that family sticks together, and it's okay to be special with each other. So, as you all know, Mom was very caring about animals and the natural world. It was something that she always felt a deep connection to, and she was a vegetarian through, I don't know when she became a vegetarian, but it seems like it must have been pretty early in her life. She loved beautiful places. She loved seeing the beauty in nature, wildflowers, trees, animals. Dad would plant marsh marigolds for her in the swampy areas at our house, and she loved that. She loved going for walks and identifying plants and birds with Dad, and had lots and lots of trips with Dad, especially after they retired. I just remember so many special times going up to like the Adirondacks and other beautiful locations with my parents. I'll always remember her as a loving, kind, and compassionate and peaceful person who helped me get onto a good path in my life. And there's a lot more, I could go on and on, but I want to give some time for other people as well, and we need to continue with our program today. So that is where I'll wrap up. And then I think Kathy will come up next, and then after Kathy, whoever wants to come up after that, I think we can, you can just sort it out among yourselves as to who goes next. And then after we see that there's nobody else who wants to say something, Sarah and Christopher will play their piece. Thank you.
I'm Kathy Lewis, next door neighbors for many years. When I think of Esther, my first impulse is to express my gratitude for who she was, for her friendship, and for the world of friendships she and John opened up to us. Ongoing friendships that date back now more than half a century. But I better start at the beginning. In 1968, fresh from graduate school, about to start teaching at Cornell, Phil and I bought a small and affordable small house, a shack really, in outer Brooktondale. A year later, the farm next door came on the market, and our real estate agent tried to talk us into buying it. He hadn't approved of our first choice. For various reasons, we turned him down, and thank goodness, because along came John and Esther. And soon after, a motley crew of undergraduates renting rooms in the farmhouse. As far as we could tell, some of them came in pairs, others paired up or not along the way. But Esther took them all under her wing. I should really say, though, that she and John took us all in, because as that little group congealed, it expanded to include non-resident friends, colleagues, neighbors. If you think on a big enough scale, you can imagine the number of planned or impromptu gatherings that took place in those early years on and around the farm. Barbecues and picnics, skinny dipping and berry picking, hay baling and pot growing and house building. I could go on and on. Through all of this, Esther demonstrated a remarkable ability to tolerate disorder and chaos, while making everyone feel welcome and often making sure they were fed. With hindsight, Phil and I have realized that one aspect of Esther's presence that we took for granted at the time is that it never seemed to occur to her to put on airs, to require attention, or to put herself first. She was content to be who she was, and she knew how to let time do its quiet work. Similarly, she was prepared to believe that problems could be solved and that needs could be met. And she made her way through toils and troubles as a partisan of positive thinking. Her talent for living with John requires special mention. A generous, boisterous, sometimes uninhibited presence. John had so many interests and ideas that he could take up a lot of space. But Esther knew how to handle the situations as they came up, how to stand her ground as needed, and she had a teasing sense of humor that came in handy. Underneath it all, we're pretty sure that John understood how smart she was and that she generally deserved to have the last word. We started our families around the same time. 5-week-old Maria came to us midsummer in 1970, and Esther, expecting Tim in November, became our daycare provider when Phil and I went back to work. We joked about the impression Esther made that fall as she did errands in town, 8 months pregnant, with a 4-month-old baby in her backpack. Maria spent her toddler years in Esther's loving care, and she had the benefit of another toddler to play with, plus up to a dozen doting adults besides her parents to keep an eye on them, and then their respective siblings, Ben, Jeff, and Matthew, when they came along. Esther could be a little, one might say, scattered on occasion. There was the time she looked after our parakeet while we were traveling. For example, when we got home, she volunteered to bring it back. She put the cage on top of the car, ran back to the house for something she'd forgotten, came out and drove off, and of course, the inevitable happened. The cage on the ground, the bird flying off. We like to think that the parakeet lived happily ever after in the woods between us, enjoying its freedom. But whatever she did was done with unfailing kindness and love. It's remarkable to think about how many people she cared for and looked after. When John's mother retired and chose to move close to the family, John and Esther built a house for her next to their own. I'm not sure at what point Priscilla may have introduced Esther to the Order of the Cross, a pacifist Christian spiritual movement that emphasizes compassion and practices vegetarianism. But Esther's relationship with her beloved mother-in-law was truly exceptional, with strong spiritual underpinnings that surely helped the family get through the devastating month between Priscilla's cancer diagnosis and her untimely death. Not unrelated to her spiritual grounding, I believe, was Esther's devotion to playing the cello. I would also mention her strenuous and successful efforts with others to found a Waldorf school in Ithaca, which still survives and thrives, I believe. She was not only at the heart of the Brooktondale cohort that Susie Larkin documented in her treasured book, Our Neighborhood. She was a valued member of larger intersecting communities as well. She has been sorely missed by many since she and John moved to the West Coast. We're very grateful to Jeffrey and all the Gowans for giving us the opportunity to celebrate her life together here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jean McFeeters, and I'm here, and I'm going to read something that Esther wrote in that book that Kathy just mentioned. Unfortunately, Susie Larkin was going to read this, but Susie has come down with COVID and can't be with us today, and Tim Larkin is suffering for years the after effects of Lyme disease, so he's exhausted today and can't be here either. Daniel and I lived in John and Esther's house on the farm during Daniel's graduate year at Cornell, and we were married on the farm, as were many of our friends. I think it was an enormous shock to my mother that it wasn't in a church and that it was in a field. She said to me afterwards, "You can annul this." I don't think he was really a priest, but he really was. So these are Esther's memories that was published in Susie's book. Our story needs a bit of prelude to explain how we came to the Brooktondale neighborhood in the first place. It began with John's idealization of farming as the most noble of occupations. After his stint in the Army, he purchased a rundown dairy farm near Center Lisle, which he operated with a team of aged draft horses named Lottie and Molly, and a herd of beautiful Jersey cows. To stay solvent, John worked at night jobs in the cafeteria of Harper College, now Binghamton University, where I was a student, and there we met. After 2 years as students in the ag school at Cornell, we got jobs as technicians and moved back to the farm in Central Lisle. We spent evenings and weekends renovating the farmhouse and nearly froze when we replaced the foundation and didn't finish the job before winter weather arrived. Exhausted and feeling like outsiders in rural Broome County, we sold the farm and purchased a mobile home close to Ithaca. We planned to spend some time comparison shopping before making the big decision as to where we should live. We didn't plan to rush, but the first place we visited in the fall of 1968 was the one we bought. Known as the Old Orton Place, it was 70 acres of marginal agricultural land. The farmhouse was built around 1860. The original barn had been destroyed by fire and replaced by a large steel pole barn. Carrie Biesemer and his family, who lived there at the time, had stripped the old plaster from the walls upstairs, but hadn't gotten far with renovations for lack of funds. The property had just gone on the market when we started looking at real estate ads in the paper. We toured the acreage, and it was love at first sight. We were in a real quandary. At this stage, we intended just to keep our feet in the water. But after visiting every place on the market within 15 miles of Ithaca with 20 acres or more, we knew we had to act. Our purchase offer of $16,000, which seemed large to us compared with the $7,000 we received for the sale of the farm in Central Isle, was accepted late in 1968, and we closed on the property in March of '69. While we were trying to make up our minds, the realtor Vic Warren introduced us to our future neighbors, Phil and Kathy Lewis. We were invited to an elegant dinner at their shack and had a tour of their 23-acre farmette bordering our property. That delightful visit helped us confirm our decision about our new neighborhood. I want to thank John and Esther for so many things. For the start of Daniel's and my life together in a beautiful place, for allowing us to marry on that gorgeous hill, for their incredible generosity when my sister Betsy, her husband, and their 2 small children were flooded out of their home in big flats in Hurricane Agnes in, I think that was '72. John and Esther immediately offered their trailer as a place for them to live. And Betsy and Tom, I think, really came to understand why we lived where we lived and why we loved it so. When I think of Esther, I think of joy. She always really radiated this incredibly joyful presence, even in some of the most trying circumstances. I remember her coming back to the farm one day and having discovered that, I don't remember which one of the boys it was, and I'm not sure if you will remember, but you were sitting in a child seat, and Esther had been at the bank and had gotten some money, which was sticking out of her pocketbook. And it was in the back seat, as were you, and you joyfully kept throwing the money out the window, which she didn't discover till she got home. So which one of you is going to confess? The rest of us went out and searched the road. I have to also say that when John and Esther brought my sister and Betsy and Tom to the farm, we had also lost the bridge on the driveway coming in. So there happily were some cars parked outside, but to get across the stream was a bit of a doing, and we all had to work on replacing that bridge. I have to say that happily one of those bridge timbers is now our mantelpiece, and it reminds us every day of the joy of living there. Esther's kindness, her excellent skills at the game of eights, which we played many evenings. John tried to make it strip eights, I believe, but we just tried to ignore him. And her real compassion for people is something I will always remember and always treasure. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Barbara Schramm, and I go back a bit with the family and Esther's compassion. And I don't know if you remember, but I was with your grandmother, and I was with her she didn't want to see me when I first came in. Remember her being very proper. But the experience was absolutely incredible. And one piece that I remember is that when she built that house, she took a chair, and you know that wonderful slope behind the house, and she would move that chair from place to place until she found where she wanted a window to be, and that's where she built her house. And that's when I came into the picture in her last days, because remember that's where they put the hospital bed so she could look out over. And Esther's compassion for her mother-in-law was absolutely incredible. Her heart was just so big. She was there, and one afternoon she said, why don't you just go take a break? And Esther had told me she was born, that grandmother was born when Halley's Comet came in, and she would die when Halley's Comet left. And she would die when the geese came. So one afternoon, Esther was there, and she said, go down and get the kids at the bus, which I did every day. And as I was going down, the geese flew overhead. And the boys got out of the bus and they said, look, the geese. And they were so excited. And I was like, oh, yes. And I went back and she was in Shane Stokes and the kids came in to say goodbye to Grandma. And I'm thinking, that's perfect because I know it's going to be soon. And it was just a little bit after that she took her breath. But the compassion that Esther had and John's beautiful mother, Priscilla Ramon, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. But to show Esther's beautiful heart, I was part of what we called Sarah's Cello Committee, which she founded. And some of us worked very hard to purchase this very cello. And it was such a wonderful, wonderful experience, and that compassion that Esther had for people. It just is so in my heart, and what a blessing that we had to have her in our lives. Beautiful, beautiful person. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carl Gibson. I'm Esther's nephew and the cousin of Matt, Tim, and Jeff. I didn't really register so much, at the time, 25 odd years ago, but just looking back, I'm just really, really amazed at the generosity of both Esther and John. I think about how expensive it is to feed 3 boys, but they were often feeding like 7 or 8 boys because there were a lot of other kids often at their house. I was there quite a bit. I probably received a few thousand free meals that were very, very nourishing, and just incredible generosity. They never really blinked at all at just feeding all these extra kids that were very often around their house, often living in their house. So they were just very incredibly generous with their house and their land, as other people have mentioned, and their food. I mean, I can't imagine what the grocery bill was, but it must have been astronomical. I just have some really tremendous memories of playing different kind of sword fighting games in that big barn, and there was that huge rope swing, and we'd swing from one side to the other, and we'd all find different sticks that we'd use as toy swords, and it was just a really incredible place to visit. I was always just super excited to come over there whenever I had the chance. So, and I'm sure Esther is in another very good place right now, and so I'm just thinking about her and sending prayers to her for her journey and her next iteration of her existence. So just glad to be here. Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Tim. So I wasn't sure until just a little while ago whether I was going to be able to speak or not. But I want to thank Christopher and Sarah for music. And I want to thank everyone who said such kind words about Mom. And you all said it in one way or another. The thing that I wanted to say, I don't have like a long speech prepared, but it is just that to me, the one thing that I keep coming back to when I was thinking about what I wanted to say is that she's a person who always put the needs of other people ahead of her own needs. And, especially her family, but, not just her family. And she had a spiritual life that we sort of had lived in different worlds, I guess, after I grew up and joined the Navy. But you know, as a mother, none of us kids ever wanted for anything. We're never hungry. If we had scrapes or bruises, she was always there to fix them. And so we never wanted for anything, and, you know, her own needs always came last. And that's, I heard you all say that in one way or another, but, you know, that's my memory of my mother, and I'm very grateful to her. That's all. And all of you, too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Edith Gowan. As Jeff's already said, I'm Jeff's wife. Before I was Jeff's wife, I was Esther's coworker and friend. I started grad school in 19. I joined Bob Turgeon's lab. Bob's here today. Thank you so much for coming. And Esther was also working there, and she soon became a treasured friend. We spent a lot of hours together in the basement of the plant science building studying flow and loading, basically how sugars get into the veins of plants to be transported. And although we were doing a lot of work, there was also a lot of chance to talk while we were doing our work. Bob shared with me that he remembers Esther as a true friend. She was friendly, capable, and productive, and he said that without her help, he couldn't have balanced his teaching and research. During her time in Bob's lab, she was a co-author on 4 important and highly cited papers. I also talked to Gail Volk, who was also in our lab. She couldn't be here, but she joined the lab a couple of years after I did, and she has really fond memories of Esther and said that she was an amazing person whom she admired. I remember Esther as a person who is just very warm, eager to help me learn the ropes, and just able to make me feel very at ease. I also remember her very meticulous and detailed instructions that she wrote out in her very distinctive handwriting. Beyond lab work, I also remember finding a kindred spirit, someone who's very thoughtful, soulful. I appreciated that we were both kind of quirky in similar ways. So Kathy talked about her, there were our desks. So my friends called me the Queen of Chaos. Our desks down in the basement of plant science were probably fairly similar. And we also could kind of over-explain things in various ways. We could be absent-minded. So the story that Kathy shared, I remember Esther telling me about putting her cup on the roof of the car and driving off. And this made me feel so at ease and comfortable because, you know, I have a number of quirks myself. And it was just nice to have that sort of shared experience. Occasionally, some of the things that Esther shared in those days were stories about her kids. And evidently, she also was talking about me at home with John in front of Jeff. So at some point, he decided that he wanted to get to know me better. At that time, so I was in grad school, Jeff was a freshman in college, and apparently Esther thought that he was probably kind of being a nuisance, but if I hadn't heard Esther's stories, I don't know if I would have really given him a chance, but I decided to have an open mind, and I'm very, very grateful that I did. Pretty quickly, we discovered that we had a really deep connection. A lot of the same traits that I valued in Esther are in Jeff also. In 1996, we ended up getting married, and Esther became not just my coworker and friend, but also my mother-in-law. So I know that mother-in-laws tend to have a bad rep. And, you know, I've talked to some people about how fortunate it was that I was already friends with my mother-in-law before we got married, so that made things so much easier. And sometimes I've thought that, but then I reflected, and I remember about my sister-in-law, Fumiko. When Tim and Fumiko got married, Esther was really excited, and she spent so much time thinking deeply with her heart about what she could do to make Fumiko really feel welcomed and part of the family. Esther was really helpful to me in a lot of ways, in growing in all kinds of ways. I don't do very well at delegating. Whenever Esther came and visited, she always knew just what to do to actually be really helpful. She taught me her philosophy that whoever was doing the prepping got to choose how to prepare it. That helped when I was helping her, because it helped me to be a better helper, and it also helped me to be better at figuring things out and delegating. I don't do it with nearly as much grace and kindness as she showed, but I really value the help and the example that I had from her. Over the years, I got to experience Esther's love and her patient caregiving. She and John moved to California soon after our son Theodore was born in 2002. And when she came to visit, I usually tried to clean up our house and get it ready, but I also had the really deep sense that I didn't have to hide the chaotic, messy part of myself, and that I could just be comfortable being me. Whenever Esther was there, she pitched in, she did everything that was needed, even when I couldn't figure out what it was that was needed. She helped in the kitchen, she folded laundry, she took care of the kids. With each of my 3 pregnancies, I had morning sickness, which was really basically all-day nausea for 9 months. And whenever she would come, she would help me. It was really hard to find any food that worked for me. She invented some really simple recipes. She wrote them out in that same handwriting that she had written out her instructions in those lab days. And when I see that handwriting now, especially when I look at those recipes, it brings back all those beautiful memories of her. Now, I like to think that I'm a patient person, but when I get sick, I can get impatient, demanding, I can complain, I can think about myself and not others. But even when Esther was sick, like Jeff said, she had this beautiful grace about her. She still found it in herself to be positive and to send out love to everyone. And one of the last memories that I have of her is when she was in her hospital bed at UCSF. I was sitting quietly with her, just holding her hand and reflecting on how blessed we both felt to have met each other so many years ago here in Ithaca in Bob's lab, and how much love we had for each other. It's that deep love and caring that she gave to me and to all of us that were touched by her. Although I know we'll all miss her very much, it's that memory, peace, love, the blessings that she sent forth to us all that I'll carry in my heart forever. In our religious tradition, we say, may her memory be eternal. Thank you.
So I'm Sarah Smolin. I'm happy to be here. And I think, has everybody spoken who would like to share something? Because we could be the last part of our time together here, we're going to play the elegy for Esther that Christopher Morgan Moy has written. He told me that he doesn't need to say anything at the microphone because the music that he wrote will convey the essence of everything he has in his heart. He took the letters of Esther and encoded them into the music, just so we all know that. So I met Esther in the 1980s when she was taking cello lessons with me. She was the last person of the night, so we would walk to the parking lot together and chat. And somehow she got it out of me that I had been being loaned cellos for many years by my cello professor. The particular cello that I had then that I loved had to be returned next February. I had no idea what to do. It felt like I would have a vital organ removed, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. So Esther, who I'm learning now is a master of starting committees, and she's so compassionate and helpful, she actually formed a committee. And this, they say every day is a miracle, and I can't tell you enough how having this cello, for me, every day is an absolute miracle. So I carry Esther's great generosity, compassion, and love with me everywhere. And Barbara, you were on the committee too, and Christopher, you played at our high teas and everything. So Esther introduced me too to the Order of the Cross, which is a deeply inspired and profound body of teachings written by John Todd Ferrier. And what they do is they read out loud to each other. It's very, very beautiful. So Esther actually kind of revolutionized that group as well. She realized that people could read out loud to each other internationally on the internet, which is what has been happening for many, many years because of Esther's sweet way of letting us all know the time zones and the number and everything. So people around the world are thanking Esther for being Esther. So here we listen to the elegy for Esther.
So we are running a little behind schedule, but that's okay. So maybe we'll try to shorten the 15 minutes to more like, 10-ish minutes of greeting one another, or and then we'll move on to the next part out at the farm. If anybody needs directions, let us know. And I think Christopher and Sarah will play a little bit of music while we greet one another and proceed on to the next step. So thank you all for coming. And I guess I just found this really beautiful, and what everybody said was very moving, and the music was very touching. So thank you all.